Kallmann syndrome and HH can be quite difficult to diagnose before the age of puberty is due. Part of this is due to a lot of the symptoms of Kallmann syndrome and HH aren't actually visible until puberty is due. Normally, puberty should have started by the age of 15, and if it hasn't started by 15, the person should be referred to a specialist endocrinologist for a full endocrine review. It may just be the case that the puberty is still delayed and it's a very simple treatment to kickstart puberty, or there may be another problem, so they should have a full review and full diagnostic workup to see if there's any other underlying problem. Now, with Kallmann syndrome, it's quite difficult to diagnose correctly. It's normally a case of eliminating all the other more common problems due to hormones, the pituitary gland, the hypothalamus, and then eliminating all the other conditions, then you arrive at the Kallmann syndrome. Now, unfortunately, there's no simple blood test for Kallmann syndrome. Unlike other genetic disorders like Klinefelter, Turner, or Down syndrome, there's no one simple genetic test for this disorder. Now, with Klinefelter, you have an extra chromosome. With Turner syndrome, there's a chromosome missing, and like Down syndrome, there's one chromosome missing, which are quite easily to test for. All you have to do is take one small blood smear and actually count the number of chromosomes in each cell, which is called a karyotype. Unfortunately, with Kallmann syndrome HH, the genetic defect that causes it is either so small it's not easy to spot because the defect is located deep within the chromosome, or more commonly, the actual defect is not known. With Kallmann syndrome and HH, they've already identified 8 possible genetic defects that can cause Kallmann's or HH, and only about 30% of cases have a known genetic cause, which still leaves 70% of cases where it just happens and there's no genetic or no known genetic cause for it. There must be a genetic cause, they just haven't been able to identify it. So it's impossible to test for it because they do not know what gene to test for to be able to give you a diagnosis. So when people with Kallmann syndrome HH even undergo fertility treatment and then have children, they have no way of predicting the chances of passing on Kallmann syndrome HH to their children. There is a chance of passing it on, but the actual percentages are very difficult, if not impossible, to judge. Sometimes you quote 25% or 50% chance, but these are just guesses, because unless you know what type of Kallmann syndrome you have, you cannot know the chance of passing on to the next generation. The only thing you do know is there is a chance of passing on to the next generation. Now, part of the diagnosis of Kallmann syndrome is what we call an MRI, a magnetic resonance imaging. Here they take an X-ray or a sophisticated picture of the inside of the brain, like a cross-section of the brain. And what they're looking for are the 2 glands that we mentioned before, called the hypothalamus gland and the pituitary gland. The first thing they're looking for is to make sure they're the right size, the right shape, but there's nothing structurally abnormal, wrong with the hypothalamus or pituitary which could cause pituitary not to work correctly or the hypothalamus not to work correctly, and make sure everything looks the way it should. Because if the pituitary wasn't working correctly, it would affect lots of other different parts of the body. Kallmann syndrome HH is a very specific disorder. It only affects gonadotropins released by the pituitary, and only affects the gonads and which are the testes and the ovaries. In Kallmann syndrome, only the pituitary is affected with these lack of gonadotropins. All the other parts of the pituitary work correctly. You can get Kallmann syndrome with other endocrine hormonal problems. This is why you do need specialist medical advice from an endocrinologist to be able to identify any other potential problems. Now, most people with Kallmann syndrome don't know there's going to be a problem until the age of puberty. Now, most of the people I know with Kallmann syndrome, including myself, would have no idea until the age of 12, 13 that there was anything wrong. You grow up quite normally. Physically, there's nothing different about you at all. The lack of sense of smell in Kallmann syndrome only, sometimes noticed, but it's not usually commented on because it happens in other people, it's just no sense of smell. And in HH, you get the sense of smell anyway. So it's only age of 13 or 14 when everybody starts developing, you suspect there may be a problem. In a small percentage of Kallmann's HH cases, there are actually physical defects or physical abnormalities with the external gonads or external genitalia, which may give an indication there is a problem. But this is actually in the minority with Kallmann syndrome. Most of the people I talk to, and including myself, would have had no indication at all before the age of puberty there was a problem. It is now suggested that 15 is a good cut-off age. If puberty has not started, either no signs of puberty in men or periods haven't started in the female by age of 15, they should get referred to an endocrinologist, not just a normal GP. A lot of times people at Kallmann's with me just get told we're late developers, go away, wait and see, and then we get put back another year. This probably is not the best way of doing it. It's now recommended, certainly by specialists here in the UK, that the best age is 15. If no signs of puberty by age of 15, they should be referred to an endocrinologist who can make a full diagnostic profile. Then, if it's just delayed puberty, they can initiate puberty very simply, or if it's Kallmann syndrome or HH or any other condition, they can start treatment straight away instead of waiting 17, 18, 19, 20, when the psychological aspects of Kallmann's can become more profound, where you almost get left behind by your peer group, where it's far better to go through puberty the same stage or same age as the rest of your peer group.